Coming up, a Sad Styles production.
Hello and welcome. My name is Mikey Aaronworth, signing on to the sign-off of Frameworth podcast for yet another week, and I am joined in studio by Brian Aaronworth, president of Frameworth Sports Marketing, who is staring me down with those eyes. He's looking at me as though he's expecting something special. I got nothing special for you this time.
I never know what you're going to get into with your intro, so sometimes I smile.
This has become part of it, though. I mean, this is what people talk about. They want to see what your introduction is going to be like, and usually you take it in stride, and this time's no different. So, good stuff. Before we get into our guest this week, I wanted to give, once again, as we always do, a shout out to our listeners who have been liking us, supporting us, subscribing, rating, reviewing on their platform of choice. This week we have a special giveaway. It's going to be, I know we don't always do a giveaway for these reviews, but we
always will.
Okay, you heard it here.
We're going to do that every week, and that's because we appreciate everybody that does follow us and follow the reviews and subscribes, etc. That helps our podcast climb up the ladder, which is important.
Climb through the charts. Listen, we all love sports. Be Team Sign Off Podcast. How about that, John? We don't have a jersey yet, but we will send you a puck if you support us. So this week we are giving a shout out to Rocker Ebo Oro via Apple Podcasts. Gives us a 5-star review. Title 5 stars. Very convenient. This is my favorite podcast, and it's not even close. The one with 99 is my favorite. Well done, guys. Thank you so much for that review. Once again, if you want to open yourself up to potentially receiving some free signed memorabilia, leave us a rating and review on iTunes or your platform of choice, and we'll potentially give you a little shout out on the podcast. You, Rocker, are going to be receiving a signed Nathan McKinnon puck. Give us an email, signoffpod@frameworth.com. We'll get in touch with you and send that out to you within 30 days. Let's say that. Let's start to put the cutoff within 30 days because we got to make sure that people are listening here. But enough of that. Enough patting ourselves on the back. It's getting obnoxious, Dad. We're loving ourselves a little bit too much. We have a guest that I cannot wait to get to this week. We're getting a snapshot of the life of one of the most prolific photographers in NHL history. He may have taken countless photos of the likes of Wayne Gretzky in his office behind the net, but many people would consider him to be the Wayne Gretzky of the photography world, with his office being behind a camera. Today on the Sign Off podcast, we welcome Bruce Bennett. Bruce, thank you for joining us.
Hey guys, how's it going up there?
That's great.
It's going fantastic. Now, before we get into it, because I got a ton of questions that I want to get to, in doing some write-ups for where I want the interview to go, oftentimes I know that there's going to be questions and leave room for discussion, but I have so many points that I want to touch on. You have such, as I mentioned, a prolific career in the world of photography, in particular for the NHL, that I almost ran out of space on my loose leaf writing these questions down. So there's going to be a ton of discussion, and I'm not sure. Maybe we'll have to get you on for a second one at some point down the line, depending on how this goes. Remains to be seen, right? We're almost passing an interview here, yeah. But the first thing I want to lead off with is, everyone recognizes your name. You're credited with so many photographs and so many examples of print, memorabilia, even just perusing Getty Images. But what a lot of people might not realize is how much of a personality you have. I mean, just someone who somehow manages to capture the hearts and minds of the people who know you, even though you're always behind the camera. I mean, typically the people who spend their lives behind the camera might be a little bit more reserved. Do you ever find yourself at odds with the fact that you're always looking for subjects when you yourself could be the subject of a great interview or anything like that?
You're too kind. Listen,
not always.
I approach a lot of things with a unique, I'm being polite about myself, a unique sense of humor, often profane. The one case in point I can pull out at this point right now is when I'd go to the NHL draft and I'd run around from table to table and photograph guys. You'd see players that I either knew when they were playing or they knew me. Sometimes it was a mild relationship where we chat on occasion. And the problem is when I'd run around and try to get headshots, as they say, for the death file, to have the most current headshot on each guy, a lot of them, like, you'd kind of get close enough to take a picture and they'd say, hey, Bruce, hey, no, make me invisible. No, you don't get it. I need like that candid shot, like, and it became, there were a few drafts, it became like really problematic. Like I'd have to put on a long lens and photograph guys from 50, 60 feet away. because there were so many people in the industry, and it's kind of it is touching that they would
That's amazing.
somehow recognize
the fact that it's hard to do your job because you're so well liked is an issue that I don't think many people have.
Well known,
but hey,
yeah, I don't know about well liked, well known. Let's leave it at that.
well known. Okay, yeah. That's fair. Well,
that's not really true.
We know that that's being a little facetious, but that's we'll get to your early days a little bit in terms of how you got involved in this whole organization, in this whole realm in a little bit. But just to kind of paint a picture, over 45 years as a photographer of hockey, 42,000 photographs in print as of a couple of years ago. So that number has only gotten higher. Print, memorabilia, etc. If you do the math, for the amount of time that you've been photographing, that's over 2 photos per day that are being used in some form of media. Walk us through how that's even possible.
I don't know how that's possible. I think part of it is the proliferation of social media and internet sites, where those numbers just skyrocketed over the past, let's say, 20 years, 25 years since the really internet boom started. Every once in a while I'll do that simple search, Bruce Bennett, Getty Images, or Bruce Bennett Hockey, and see what comes up. Sometimes it's a picture of me. Sometimes it's fun stuff like copyright violations, so I can make some more money.
There you go.
Or put it on to the corporate lawyers to take a look. But I think it's the plethora of media that's out there and the opportunity to place images in different kinds of media. Plus, obviously, knowing the industry. Knowing what kind of images clients are most likely to use, whether it's commercial uses like trading cards or newspapers or websites.
Yeah, and it seems as though, especially in your earlier days of photography, a lot more of it relied on you being in the right place and right time. Since you began working with Getty as the director of photography for Hockey Imagery, it seems as though you're more of a coach or a taskmaster for people you're going to have to provide guidance to, who are going to be in the arena doing what you still do, but what you kind of started getting your start as. And I want to get into that in a little bit. But while we're on this track of just kind of talking about how much it is that you've actually done, I'm curious, like with such an extensive career, as we mentioned, 5,200 games or so, 55 arenas, 40 Stanley Cup deciding games, various All-Star games, Olympics, you've been the team photographer for a few teams. Is there anything to date that you haven't done that's still on that list of things you want to check off?
Boy, oh boy. Well, you stumped me already.
That's interesting. I never thought that question.
I'd like to survive the Olympics in Beijing. That's, I think, the next thing on my.
You're planning to head over there.
Yeah, that's the next thing. Is it gets more difficult year after year. But not only the physicality, but there are a lot of times, especially some of the younger photographers who work with us will see me just standing in the empty arena. And, you visualize the game, and you visualize where you can put a camera that you haven't done that previously, what techniques you have to pull out of the hat. Maybe you did it 20, 30 years ago, or maybe you've never done it. You look at the work of other photographers in other disciplines, and you try to bring that into your work to be different.
Do you find that you're still learning? You're still seeking out new and innovative ways that other photographers are bringing their work to the masses and trying to learn from that? Is that part of your day-to-day still?
Yeah, it's hard sometimes when you think about it being one of the photographers that people look up to because of the discipline that I've chosen, doing ice hockey. And you kind of know also that since the Getty Images site is open for people to go peruse anytime they want without logins and permission, they can look at everything on an ongoing basis. Each night there are some photographers who will type in Bruce Bennett Hockey or type in a game and look at the pictures for the game. So I kind of bear a little bit of a sense of responsibility to bring it every night, not only for Getty Images and our clients, but um, to keep myself at the forefront. So I'm always thinking of something different. I don't bring it every night in terms of something unique. But if I capture a game and I get the story of the game each night, really that's the task that I'm faced with.
Now, I'm curious that you say that. You brought up something interesting there. Your work is immediately, the best and worst of it. Obviously not every photo you take is going to make it to Getty Images, but all of the photographs that you take make it the ones that you want to show online immediately. And therefore, your competition can essentially see your work as it's coming out. I was wondering whether or not you're learning things from other people. Is there a sense that you can't protect your trade secrets because it's just a part of you, or are you so not to say you're being cocky about it?
Is
but
there
are you
competitors to Bruce?
There are always going to be people chomping at the bit. I mean, are you worried that you can't help but give away some of your secrets just by doing your job?
Yeah. Double-edged sword. I hate competitors. I was always from the John Ferguson school, and that he was known during the summers when he would walk the streets in Montreal. If he'd see a player from another team walking towards him, he would cross the street. And that's the school. That's a school really that for many years I prided myself going to the John Ferguson school. More so these days, maybe I'm more confident now after this is year 47. I share techniques. If I pride myself on answering every email, every text, every stupid Instagram message, Facebook message. Sometimes they I miss them for like 6 months, and then I have to apologize profusely and go, dude, I knew there was a message somewhere, but between Facebook message and just email me, please, because I can keep track of it a lot better.
Keep it all in one place.
Yeah.
Bruce, I wanted to ask you. You obviously are top of the heap in terms of photography now. Is there somebody that influenced you? I'm thinking in particular, there's some great photographers in the past. Barkley was one of them, and his collection is outstanding as one of the top collections back in the past. Did you study any of those guys and their techniques to develop your own, or are you just self-taught?
Well, I had assistants through the years, and photographers that I looked up included photographer by the name of Joe DiMaggio, not that one, but
not the same one,
not that one.
And Joe DiMaggio and his wife, Joanne Kalish, accomplished photographers in the New York area that took me under their wing and let me trail them and walk along and learn from them. As well, a guy out of New Jersey who's still out there. I'd call him an old master, but he wouldn't like the term old. But Melchior DiGiacomo shot a lot of World Hockey Association and early Ranger stuff. But an old world master, a craftsman. So I looked up to him. And of course,
right.
Out of Montreal, David Beer. I looked so forward to going up there and just having coffee with him after games and talking about photography and technique. And Denny Brodeur, of course, was friendly with him, and a gentleman. When you just look at what he was able to do, I mean, he would walk in each night and shoot maybe 36 frames, and each one was a gem. Now we'll shoot 3,500 and, we'll scrape through and pull out 100 to transmit.
Right.
So those are the guys I looked up to, but a lot of my craft was self-taught, because when I got started in the industry, photographers weren't willing to share their knowledge with you. As a freelance photographer, it was a tough go in New York, where the photographers would look down on you and treat you like crap.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting you bring up Brodeur there, and I do want to get into kind of the early days in New York, especially as well. But I had read a story that you recounted after the Montreal Canadiens had won the Stanley Cup and this is speaking sort of to the in-stadium competition of various photographers, of you struggling and failing to get on the ice as the celebrations were going on. Can you walk us through that night and the minutes leading up to that?
No, I really don't want to go back and talk about that. Well, it was a cold, rainy night in Montreal.
Aren't they all?
Yeah, nobody spoke English, and I got screwed. I was ill prepared. I mean, these days I do my homework starting in the morning, and reading my media notes and crossing the T's and dotting the I's, and I learned my hard lesson in Montreal. Was one of the hard lessons I learned. Getting ready for Stanley Cup presentation, 1979, Rangers at Montreal. I rarely remember years and teams, but that one I do remember. And back then, of course, Montreal was a little tougher to get around if you spoke no French. And I'm sure pre-game there was a meeting somewhere amongst photographers and the people in charge saying, if this ends tonight, this is how you're getting on the ice. Show your credential and all is good. And I had no idea. So at the end of the game, myself and another photographer from New York who I was friendly with ran from our photo positions around the ice in one direction, and a big security guard blocked the way, and really couldn't get directions, but we ran around the rink behind the net as players started their celebration on the ice. And at that point, the two of us split off into different directions. He picked the right one and got out there on the ice. I could not, so I returned to where I was shooting from and stood on the chairs in the front row. And the fans who were there were so sweet and polite to help steady me while I shot pictures over the glass of Bob Gainey being lifted onto the shoulders of his teammates. Unfortunately, it was the back of Bob Gainey, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it. The Hockey News, who I had agreed to supply photos from that event, was not thrilled with my generic image that's, to me, symbolized, well, I thought of that afterwards, but symbolized, the struggle to win the Stanley Cup, because it was an unnamed player, even though obviously the back of the jersey said Gainey, but all the hands lifting him up. It was a beautiful frame, but really didn't tell the story that the Hockey News or many other clients, I'm sure, would have liked. So I learned my lesson.
And do you recall whose photo ended up being used by the Hockey
Denny
News?
Brodeur.
Denny Brodeur.
Yeah.
There you go.
Brings us, by the
brings us
way,
full
is
circle.
Martin's dad, isn't he?
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
I believe I've heard of him before.
Yes.
I'm not sure. I believe I've seen some photographs taken of him as
Yeah.
well. And now, Bruce, on that note, how competitive does it get among photographers in the arena, or is it pretty much copacetic? And on any given day, how many photographers would you be competing with to take these photographs?
Yeah. Typical, especially at big games when you get to Stanley Cup Finals time, you've got between 30 and 40 photographers in the building. Not in COVID years, but typical over the last 10, 12 years anyway, you'd have around 35 photographers. And you can contrast that to like a gold medal final where you would have up to 120 photographers in the building.
Wow.
Worldwide. How do they designate your positions?
Well, as Getty Images, you're part of, I guess they call it Olympic pool or something along those lines. So the biggest agencies in the world get the preferred positions. And typically those are in the deep corner position, that is just south of where the goalie's line hits the boards, because from that position you can twist behind the net and twist your lens up ice and be able to capture the entire ice surface. Difference, of course, from NHL to Olympics is Olympics, there are no holes in the glass. In NHL, there are holes in the glass.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, well, Olympics would be like Swiss cheese because you'd have 15 guys in each corner.
That's fair. That's fair. Too many holes in the glass. Yeah,
and then
it's already dangerous enough being there.
Yes, yep. And then upstairs, you'd have 60 guys upstairs shooting. So the competition is tough.
you ever get a puck through that hole in the glass?
Many times.
Many times.
Sometimes
Can
really.
you walk us through some of your work on purpose? Yeah.
You know,
Maybe some of the most memorable instances.
Somebody you
of-
know that wants to just give you a little fright there?
look, it's a skill. You know, if you can hit that 4-inch by 5-inch hole, you know, and not tip the edges, that's a skill. I think it was Rogie Vachon. No, it wasn't. It was Mike Vernon, Madison Square Garden, where you know what? Sometimes you just catch a player's eye and you just go, "Oh, fuck me, here it comes." You
It's
know?
coming.
And it was one of this, like, yeah, like this is warm-ups, and I just like took the camera and I leaned, and he shot it directly through the hole, and then of course it was like, yeah, and I'm like, what is wrong with you? Are you out of your mind? You know, like, what are you thinking, dude?
Funny.
all in good fun to
Yeah.
him, but
I was
incredibly
actually
good to see.
almost kidding,
Yeah.
but I figured maybe the odd one goes through.
No.
But if they're purposely trying to fire it through there,
Well, you've said, Bruce, in interviews that it's almost like a rite of passage. Like every photographer gets a puck at some
Yeah,
point.
yeah.
Do you have any that stick out in your memory apart from that, which was a little bit more playful, something that actually kind of took a ding?
It was, you know what? It was mostly in the early days where you would be at center ice positions, completely exposed. So
Right.
before we had these silly holes in the glass, you'd be either in a penalty box or in a photo box, jammed in with 4 or 5 photographers next to the player's bench or next to the penalty box. And from there, you would get hit from everywhere. I mean, you'd have guys clearing the puck down ice. You know, in the early days, the New York Rangers would have their annual Christmas party. They would invite the media to come and skate with the players and their families. And so this one year, few of us went over to Carol Vadnais, the Ranger defenseman. We said, "Come here, we want to talk to you for a minute." And so, you know, what's up with his French accent? And he said, "Listen, what we want you to do is we want you to go stand in that photo box where we usually are, and we're going to take turns circling around behind the net and shooting pucks at you like you do to us." It's, "Oh, I hate when that happened, when I try to clear the puck down ice and it hits you guys." "Oh, yeah, it hits you guys." yeah, it hits us guys, you know. And you would just, you know, we would get hit, pucks, sticks, players, literally in those early days, and that was, you know, late 70s, I would wake up in the middle of the night and just go, "Oh," you know, like all night. I'd wake up flinching from, you know, worrying about pucks and sticks, you know, hitting me.
I can't even, like, I've been behind the glass when a puck comes fast enough and you flinch just as a result of that. But when you're actually exposed, like, I know I can't get hurt standing
well, the
there,
kids
but-
today, they don't even remember. It's just natural. We were really mad back in the day when they put the big nets behind the nets. 'Cause
Right.
what are they doing? They're blocking my view.
Yeah.
Well, so what if the odd person gets hit with a puck?
Yeah.
You know, it's worth the risk. But we had seats behind the net, and the puck would come fly. But I remember sitting as a kid, Bobby Hall coming down the wing in Maple Leaf Gardens, and my uncle had seats right behind the net, and the puck marks in the gold section behind your head.
Oh, wow.
There was 20, 30 of them.
Yeah.
And when he came flying and that puck came over the boards, you could get killed
Oh, yeah.
with Bobby Hall slap shot. Wow.
Yeah.
So these guys are doing it every day.
And in the corner and much, they're not in the golds. They're
Yeah.
they're in the platinums.
Yeah.
They're right next to it. They're ringside. So let's dial it back a little bit, because I'm interested to know more about how you got involved, a little bit about your early days, and I've been curious. Over the course of your career, this is kind of half tongue-in-cheek, half not, but how is your accounting degree factored in your life as a photographer? You gotten much use out of that?
Yeah, well, for starters, it allowed me, it gave me the knowledge to run my business for 30 years before Getty Images acquired my company. The account
That being BBS, Bruce Bennett
yeah,
Studios?
yep, PBS. You know, running the business with the marketing, the management, and the accounting. You know, I often said that a lot of photographers who are out there had the same skill as me, maybe even more skill, but I was better on the business end. And I mean that quite honestly. A lot of talented photographers out there in every photographic discipline who aren't able to create a business because they don't have that skill set.
Right.
And then the counting thing, it was either, counting games, counting photographs, counting, it's either an OCD thing or the
Fair.
accounting thing, where I was always into the numbers and was able to, it was necessary for me to put things down on paper.
Yeah, there are legendary stories about how meticulous you are leading your team at each game, which I do want to get into a bit once we start to go more into the acquisition by Getty. But to stick a little bit on your early days, I want to draw a little comparison. In the similarity between you, Dad, and Bruce in just the ability to market your own ideas. I was fascinated by your first story, Bruce, of getting accepted by the Hockey News, in spite of the fact that they didn't know they were about to accept anything from you. You did something that my dad talks about very often on this podcast, where when you know you have something good, you just find a way to put it in front of the people who need to see it. We've had, one such example being a frame that we did up for the Super Bowl and mailing it to, I think it was Labatt's at the time. Yep. Corporate offices and initiating an order that way. You often, Dad, say that you owe a lot to the fortuitous nature of your life, but you can't accept fortune without putting yourself first in a position where you can potentially receive it. And Bruce, in your example, 1974 or so, out of university, taking some photographs of a hockey game and sending them to the Hockey News. Did you expect anything to come of that? And can you kind of take us through your mentality of putting these photographs in an envelope, sending them nondescript, and expecting or not expecting anything? What was that like?
I was a really dumb kid. That's pretty much it. I was dumb as a rock, and nothing ventured, nothing gained.
Right.
You're going to sit in your bedroom and watch TV. It doesn't make sense. Some people who sit on their hands and expect the world is going to be coming and knocking on their door.
Right.
But it was, a shot in the dark. And, I got a friend of mine who, I'm gonna digress here. I got a friend of mine who I went on a mini ski vacation with, and he picked out, and he's not a handsome guy. He picked out the most beautiful girl that he saw, and she was walking around with her parents. I went back to the room, and then like an hour later, he shows up with her, and he explained his theory. You know what? If you don't ask, you don't get. If you don't put yourself out there, you're not going to move ahead in life.
Right.
The Hockey News thing was just one of those things where I subscribed to the Hockey News, and I said, I'd love to sell these guys photos. I had taken photos. I mean, I was relatively new at photography. Maybe I had a camera for less than a year. Took pictures at Madison Square Garden from the blue seats all the way upstairs. The worst photos I think anybody's ever seen. And from warm-ups at an Islander game, when my cousin helped me sneak down into the photo box for warm-ups. So made some beautiful little 5x7 photos and sent them up to the publisher of the Hockey News, Ken McKenzie. They were based out of Montreal back then on St. Catherine Street. And said, hey, do you want to buy some photos? And back then, of course, it wasn't, you didn't get your instant answer. You waited for mail to arrive.
Right.
And the letter finally came, and he said, sure, we'll pay you $4 a photo. And the classic line was, can you get into the games on your own, or would you like me to get you a press pass?
Or would you like me to get you?
Let me just ponder that for a couple of minutes. So I responded, and that next season, 74-75, I did a bunch of games at Madison Square Garden and at New York Islanders, which were my two local teams back then. That's where.
So when you sent this envelope, there was an intent to get their attention and potentially have your photographs purchased. It wasn't just kind of like fan mail, like, hey, I got these cool photos. You did have an idea in mind of, like, when you got the reply, A, were you surprised? B, were you expecting a potential press pass, or was all of this more than you had expected?
I said I was a dumb kid. I was like, I didn't know where it was going to lead. I mean, I was hoping it would lead to me getting to games and shooting pictures. And I became what had happened actually, and I didn't know it at the time, was a guy who was writing articles for the Hockey News in the I'm sorry, he was taking pictures in the New York area and supplying them with some photos. When the Islanders started the year before I shot pictures, he switched over to being a writer. So they had that gap where they needed some photos that this guy used to supply to them. So it was kind of,
Fortuitous. There's that word.
The time, timing is everything. And the fact is, most of the people in the industry weren't going to sell him photos for $4. And I was, as many photographers that get started in this industry, they work for free or they work for cheap to get their foot in the door, prove themselves, hone their craft, and eventually move on to better paying work.
Isn't that always the way it is, though? I mean, I have people coming to me, and I'm not taking a shot at any generation, but millennials, no.
I knew it was going to use that word at least once in this interview.
And want six-figure salary before they even prove themselves. And the best employees that I've ever hired, my best employee here, started in the shipping department, now runs the whole operation.
Yeah.
And he is making the money, but he's proven himself. That's why I said, and you submitted photos to Hockey News. I keep telling Mikey, submit one of these tapes to Sportsnet and see if you can get a job on Real TV. No,
Real TV. Real TV.
Other than the computer monitor I'm looking at.
That's the pre-YouTube show where you just watch
exactly.
on camera. Great show, actually. I'm surprised I even referenced that one. I do like that whole story, though. It's amazing that it kind of gets your foot in the door. I'd imagine, though, you had just graduated, I believe, at this time. You have your accounting degree. What were your parents thinking at this? What were your parents thinking at this time?
Oh, shit. There you go. Yeah, that was... I was in the third year of college going for an accounting degree. And when I explained to my father what I was looking at doing, becoming a photographer, he leaned in like really close. And he said, "Oh, you will get your degree." And so it's like, okay. And, it worked out. I mean, parents couldn't have been prouder. Each time photos would appear anywhere. And my career built rather quickly, quite honestly. It was just circumstance. And I say that because when photographers would start working for me, the first thing after they would shoot a game, they'd be kind of depressed on what they shot. And I would tell them, go back and look at what I shot in 74, 75, 76, 77. And you'll see a progression, but you'll see a whole ton of shit that's in the files of stuff where I was just feeling my way and guessing. And once again, there were very few people out there to help me and guide me until DiMaggio stepped in around early 80s and kind of led me into a better direction.
What is that? What would that skill be? I mean, it's so, as someone who I don't have an artistic bone in my body. So when you talk about like the skill of taking a photograph of a hockey game, I'm sure there are a lot of people that almost can't relate to the fact that there is a distinct craft to it. There's a skill that you develop. The timing of taking a photo, is there just this innate instinct that you have now when you see a player winding up for a slap shot? Not yet, not yet, not yet. Now, like, does that come second nature? Was developing that skill something that took longer than you might have expected? Was it more difficult than you expected?
I've said in the past, I mean, it's anticipation, it's instinct, and it's experience. And once you get the experience, the instinct and the anticipation are honed to such a degree that it's seamless. It's not like a thought pattern where you go, okay, well, he's winding up, he's going to take a slap shot now.
Right.
You have to react as quickly as the players act. Otherwise, you're going to miss the shot. So
that's interesting. As you say that, Bruce, I'm starting to think as the game has changed so much since the 70s, and it's so much faster now. So as you go along, you're not just taking the same skill and reusing it. You have to keep adapting because you're going to miss those shots now that you could have gotten back in the day, right?
Yeah. That's an interesting point. I guess I grew along with the sport, because I really never thought about the speed now as opposed to the speed then. Year by year, obviously the equipment gets better. And, when you think about it, the first 25, 30 years approximately. Maybe the first 30 years I was all manual focus.
Right.
Now the big equalizer for a lot of these guys is autofocus, and the autofocus is better every year, and the cameras are better every year, and it's more of a level ground. In the early days, I got so good with certain lens and camera combinations that there was never an apparent thought pattern. Okay, I got to rack the zoom this way, I got to rack the focus this way. Your hand kind of did it without thinking about it. There was, your mind could be a mile away and you were just doing it. And now
it feels almost like it's the same as you ask a player, like you ask Wayne Gretzky, how do you take a slap shot? He's not saying, well, the first thing I do is I condense my core and then I wind it, like it does become second nature. On that note, you've sort of co-opted one of Wayne Gretzky's famous quotes of you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. You sort of co-opted that in a fun way as it applies to photography. There's another saying that Wayne has, which is don't go where the puck is, go to where the puck is going to be. Is there an element of you reading the play of the game where you're kind of anticipating what's going to happen almost before the players get there, where you say, I've seen this rush before, I know where they're going to be, my camera's going to be there before they even get there?
I'm so proud of myself when I can look into the future and point the camera in the right direction. It's one of those 50-50 propositions, or sometimes it feels like it's 80-20 in the wrong direction when you're going, okay, that guy is going to take the slap shot from the point. Is he going to score? Do you stay on him in case there's a great celebration, or do you twist towards the net and hope that something happens there? Maybe the guy tips it in, or you get some guy celebrating somebody else's goal, which is, could be a shot, but also could be very meaningless. When you miss it, you go, okay, the next one's going to come my direction. The thing is that experience, not only with specific players and where they're more likely to travel when they hit the ice, and teams patterns, how certain teams set up their power play, which players hug the board, which guy is most likely to dish off the puck. Those are things that come the more games you shoot and the more times you see a team. And that's why it's difficult with the schedule being so screwy the last couple of years. Right. I mean, I'd see a Western team would come in and go, holy shit, is that guy still in this league? You'd go like, holy shit, I thought that guy was dead by now, or he's ready for the Hall of Fame. Sorry, Blake Como. I don't mean to, but I mean, every time that team comes in, it's Blake Como's on the team. There must be 12 of them.
It's funny. We could talk about the greatest shots that you've taken, and there's a lot of them. And we just touched on, where you need to point your camera and that. And I'm probably stomping on Mikey's next question, but what about the shots that you've missed? Is there anything that you think, oh my God, how did I miss that shot? I mean, obviously Henderson's goal, but that was prior to you didn't start till in 72. Before you weren't in 72. So talk about a classic shot that would have been the all-time greatest, and you just missed it.
Yeah, like.
Is there anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, like every day, like every damn day.
No, but not one of those Henderson goals or Gretzky 50 and 39 comes around every day. Those are the kind of things I'm thinking, did I miss that?
Oh, thanks for reminding me, Brian. Really, really like you, man.
Well, there's got to be something. You've got all the great ones, so you must have missed a couple. You can't help it.
I did miss the great one. I missed the great one. I made a decision when he went for the record in Los Angeles. Was that 802?
802, yeah.
A number that will live in infamy in my world. I made a decision to shoot that from upstairs instead of from ice level for several reasons. The ice level of positions were not conducive to him scoring at the other end of the ice. The chances of being blocked by referee, linesman, or other players was so great. Back then, I guess I wasn't doing remote cameras, or in that arena we couldn't do remote cameras, which are a form of protection for you not seeing it from your camera, you put up remote cameras so that you'll have something from every angle. So I made the decision to go upstairs going, you know what, it's more important not even to see his face, which I'm big on seeing players' faces, but you got to capture the moment. So I went upstairs and I got him scoring, and right up the middle of the frame are two arms outstretched of fans who jumped out of the seats and blocked me for that shot.
You know, so that I don't think Wayne is offended with that, because you become very close friends with Wayne. You're the photographer of choice for all that. That's where I see him the most, or had seen him the most, is all the fantasy camps that Bruce was invited to do the photography for, and Wayne wouldn't have anybody but Bruce for those camps, and we talked about it many times
for obvious reasons. And it seems like you've been fairly close with Wayne. And I was kind of curious, Wayne Gretzky having played fewer than 2,000 games. I mean, what a chump compared to your 5,200. Do you ever rib a little bit for that?
He's a loser. I mean, what did he?
I know. Come on, like what's he even doing?
What has he ever done?
You've more than doubled it.
Yeah. No, it really hasn't come up with any of the players. I mean, I'm not really aware. Throughout my career, I've kept my distance from players. So, although Brian has seen me enjoying being around the campers and sometimes the players at fantasy camp, the fact is, I really don't have any, and never had. I can't say I had a relationship with a player. I don't think you can say that in 2021. Never went to dinner with.
Or you can.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, I've never gone to dinner with the players. The closest I've ever been embedded with players might be either at fantasy camp, or I was with Gretzky and friends in '94 for his Nordic tour and the World Stars tour.
Now, he invited you to that, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So you may not be personal friends and drinking buddies with these guys, but they respect your work. So on that level, you're always getting invited by the people that know your work and know you. So, I think that's good enough.
Is it kind of by design that you don't socialize with them as much? Is it because you want, you talked about going through I think you were saying the awards dinner and everyone stopping to talk to you. Do you want to keep that impersonal relationship because it benefits your photographs?
Yeah. Always wanted to keep it separate. And the line I always said is, if I see a player clubbing another player like he's a baby seal, I'm going to publish that photo. So
yes, yeah,
editorial integrity. It's big with Getty Images. It was big with me at Bruce Bennett Studios. You need to be unencumbered in the use of the photography. And really, I just, quite honestly, I mean, I'm at home now. Maybe I've got 6 pictures up on the walls that are autographed, and most of them were given to me. I rarely have ever asked anyone to autograph anything to me, whether it's sticks or pictures. I just felt it was unprofessional.
Do you put something from Sidney? I can do that for you.
How much is that going to cost me?
Nothing. I would do that for you gratis. So would he.
Yeah.
Do you put any of your own photographs up? Do you celebrate some of your better ones by framing them and putting them around your place, or do you keep yourself separate even from your own photos?
There are a few on the walls here, but I don't know. I see hockey photos every day. And there are a couple of ones that are special to me that I've got on the walls, but really, picture of Wayne and myself that he autographed to me, or one with Mario Lemieux, another one with Neil Smith, who was close to for many years, and Martin Brodeur. But no.
Well, there leads to a good question. What's your favorite photograph that you've taken?
Yeah, favorite photograph
you have
I've
one?
taken. Well, let's see. Let's see if I can direct the video camera up here.
There you go. This is a cue if you're not watching over on YouTube.
Oh.
Now we're taking a look over there. Is that Martin Brodeur?
That is somebody. Corey Schneider.
Corey Schneider with the puck from the netcam's perspective.
Right. That's a huge puck.
Great shot.
Great.
That's
That's great Photoshop work there, ladies and gentlemen. No,
yeah, I imagine it's not. That looks. So what we're looking at for the listener, it's from the netcam's perspective. The puck is clearly in view as Schneider looks back at it. A great photograph from our perspective, but one that I'd imagine Schneider doesn't like all that much because the puck's going past him.
yeah, that's life. What are you going to do?
That's life. It happens.
Well, there you go. That's why you're not friends with Schneider.
Yeah, exactly. Editorial integrity. You mentioned editorial integrity and the importance of it to Getty Images, which kind of leads us into where I'd like to take the conversation. Prior to working with Getty in the capacity that you're with now as the director of photography for Hockey Imaging, you, as you mentioned, ran BBS, Bruce Bennett Studios. In 2004, I believe you were acquired by Getty. And I'm curious always when you go from kind of running your own studio and doing a lot of the photography yourself, what changes when you take on the role of a director of photography as opposed to you running your own studio?
You find out a lot about yourself because, I mean, for starters, I wouldn't wake up in the middle of the night and worry about how to hit payroll the next day because I had
Right.
12 people working for me. But early on, I realized that the pressure to succeed and be the best at my craft and be the top of the industry was, it was inside me. It wasn't that I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going to go work for somebody else and I'm, going to chill,
Right.
I'm still the same personality. The people, the photographers I hire to do jobs know that I expect the most from them. Same as, I expected the most from the people who worked for me at BBS. Some appreciate that and some don't. But, you want to be the best. You got to pay attention to your job. You got to be focused and in focus. Little pun there,
Hey.
little photo pun.
There you go. I like it. I'm right up my alley. Keep the puns coming.
And that's, if you're not going to try to be the best at what you do, like, what are you doing here?
Yeah. Now, what changed in terms of your day-to-day? Was there more responsibility in terms of managing a team, or was it largely unchanged, but you were just now working under the umbrella of Getty Images?
Yeah. I mean, the biggest difference was if I didn't like somebody who was working for me back in the old days, I could fire them. Now I couldn't.
That's a big
Yeah,
difference.
I would report to somebody else who would report to somebody else. And,
It's always better being the benevolent dictator,
Hold on. I just got to write that down. Benevolent.
Yeah.
Got it.
He'll probably say it again before the end of the
Yeah.
episode. It's one of his favorite terms.
Yeah, you've heard that before. Yeah.
Yes,
Oh,
I have.
never.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. It's tough being in charge. But I do have people over me. I mean, at one time, look, going from a sole proprietorship and having people under me and making the decisions, going to Getty Images, early on, I phoned a lovely British guy who was high up in Getty Images and the guy who basically did the deal to acquire Bruce Bennett Studios. And I phoned him. The guy's name is Nick, and I was friendly with him. At least I thought we were friendly. And I phoned him and I left him the message, Nick, why are people in this company afraid to take a shit unless you say it's okay? And the reason was that I couldn't get to yes. I could not get the people above me to say yes. Like, yeah, this is a good deal. Run with this. Change this, but do this. Let's move. It's slow.
Because they all had to check in with
Slow
Nick.
is death. Slow will kill you. Competitors will kill you if you're slow. And early morning, because he was in London, it was something ridiculous, like 5:36 in the morning, and it was that British voice. Hello, Bruce. It's Nick. I'm calling to tuck you in off the ledge. And you know what? I'm sure it's typical from people going from sole proprietorship to going to a corporate environment. And I kind of enjoyed navigating it at times. Like, how do I get things done? And at other times it was so frustrating. But I'm in the happy.
So you're saying You're saying I should or shouldn't sell my company and work for someone else?
Good luck.
What advice can you give me, Bruce?
We'll talk. We'll take that offline when Mike's not around.
Good luck being a benevolent dictator working for someone else.
No,
It's not
I have
gonna
to
work.
be the benevolent dictator.
I like that saying, Bruce. Speed is or slow is death. You're constantly going to get taken over. I've heard about the frenetic pace with which you lead a hockey game with all the photographers who are there. I've also heard, and I need you to walk me through this, that you bring schematics to a game. If I'm honest, I don't know what that means. For the layman, can you walk us through what's involved prepping for a game and what schematics have to do with it?
I for better or worse, I'm known for the diagrams of the arenas and going into games. I mean, once again, I'll start by standing in the arena and looking around and looking at catwalks, looking where remote cameras can be. And typically what I'll do is I'll set out where photographers are going to be, what photo positions, to make sure that the ice is blanketed, either with photographers with handheld cameras or remote cameras that provide the backup to us to ensure that no moment is missed. And some of these things get so complicated that one of the editors I use mostly is a guy out of New York, Justin Hyman, and he makes fun of the diagrams, but it allows him to see as well. We go over which camera is being triggered by what photographer, so the photo credits are usually correct. But they do get pretty complex from a World Cup, from an Olympics gold medal game where you'll have 5 photographers and I think it was 9 remote cameras. And each camera and photographer, I'm mapping out what area of the ice each will see. So if a player scores and goes in a certain direction, where is that going to be captured?
And do each of the individual photographers have sort of a designated task? You're taking the photo if X, Y, or Z happens, and that kind of covers off this block of ice, goals, passes, whatever that is. Or are the photographers in that area kind of left to their own devices?
Yeah, at some point, especially when you get to the big games, whether it's Stanley Cup and Olympics, photographers assigned to those games don't fail. Their job is to cover everything that comes their way. Sometimes it's interaction. Typically it's story of the game, the big moments, which anything that happens in front of them is their responsibility. And then as well, we have some commercial needs that need to be handled as well. So Stanley Cup, you got players wearing that Stanley Cup logo. It's imperative we come out of Stanley Cup with every player with that logo on their chest.
Oh,
well, and funny you should say, it just brought to mind that I've called Bruce a number of times over the years and said, look, Sidney's playing in this particular city at this particular time. He's about to get his particular, some record-breaking thing or something that was important for our business, the memorabilia side that we wanted to capture. And he's done his best to accommodate us wherever he can. It's not always a photographer in every rink in every position, but we know ahead of time. And he's told us that, like, if you need a photo of a certain thing, call me, and we'll try and set that up as best we can. If we want it, generally
more people will
the
want
NHL will want it too, but sometimes it's hard to capture.
Now, Bruce, how often is my dad insulting you by assuming that you didn't already know that a big milestone was coming up?
Honestly, I mean, day in and day out, I tell our photographers all around the league, you got to read the media notes. You got to read the media notes. There's sections in there on milestones. I watch NHL on the fly here in New York every day. I pick up, things that happened. Sometimes things that will be happening, but, no matter how much I scour the internet and newspapers online and all that stuff, the photographers are really tasked with a lot of the day-to-day milestone coverage. When I'm worried about them and I know which group might be good photographers, but Getty Images photographers, they're doing football one night, baseball the next, or basketball, then they're in hockey, and it's like, I know their head is swimming with all kinds of stuff. So part of my job is making sure that those key moments are handled. But man, I always appreciate when clients give me the heads up, because it could easily be something that I just knew nothing about.
Great. I love that.
Yeah, no, that's great. And the other thing you mentioned was remote cameras.
Yeah.
So you were a part of that whole netcam thing, which was a whole revolution. It never was a netcam before.
Right.
And I remember when it first came out, all sorts of issues with players wanting to fire the puck at it and see if they can knock it off or whatever. Tell me some experiences about that, because I'm sure you're involved with some of that.
Yeah. I think one of the fun things with the netcam is that at the Olympics, the U.S. women's team started to realize that camera in the net was there, for a purpose. And the women's hockey teams are big for going into that huddle at the net before the game, and the U.S. women's team has looked at that as their opening photo opportunity.
Amazing!
There's every once in a while the game starts and you're just like looking around, they're huddling. Oh shit, because there are so many great frames of them like looking at the camera and mugging before they, like just something to get loose.
Oh,
before
that's
the
fantastic.
Game,
So do you actually have to physically press a button, or is it just kind of automatic that it goes off?
It's remotely triggered. Typically, sometimes we're at the same end of the ice, but typically to separate one side of my brain from the other, I put the remote cameras at the far end of the ice from where I am, and you're shooting blindly. You're shooting 10 to 14 frames a second. You hold the button down when anybody breathes anywhere near the net cam. And then it's like Christmas morning when you finally get that digital card and you scroll through and you realize, oh man, I got a winner, or I got 1,000 pictures of the goalie's ass.
Well, that was a great
also
shot.
A winner. Also a winner, though.
Marcus, yeah.
As 2002, that was a great netcam shot for winning goal, right?
Thanks.
Olympics.
I didn't shoot that, so let's move.
Oh, there's other photographers out there, Bruce. You're not the only one. No.
Yeah, and he's going to say,
but you're the only one on this podcast. So thanks for doing that.
It was mine then. I shot that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Take the credit, or you at least influence the angle. So there's that. You can take some credit for that.
And let me talk about influencing the angle, because to me, the netcam thing is such a cliche at this point. It's still great when you get a great image. I had a great one at Islanders Rangers about 2 weeks ago that I was really happy with. Rarely, do you come out of it and go, that's a stunner. It actually triggered. There wasn't any radio frequency in the building that stopped it from working. It wasn't crooked, or it wasn't filled with ice and snow. The fact is, when you're pushing a button, I understand that, most of it is setting it up and making sure it looks good before you walk away from it for 2.5 hours. I don't know. To me, it just, to call it something special or some great creative thing when you're pushing a button from 200 feet away, I don't know. I kind of don't buy into it,
It's still great. Obviously, if you're there holding the camera in the old days when you can capture a great moment because you had to do all the work, that wasn't all out. That must have been a little more rewarding than maybe today, but still in all, when you get a great shot and people go, wow, that's crazy, that's amazing. I remember one of the great shots I saw years ago was Sidney Crosby splitting the defense in his first or second year, where he's he's got one
Rangers,
leg in the air, one over the back of the goal or the defenseman who was trying to hip check him, and he still makes it through. What a great action shot. And I'm pretty sure in those days somebody had to be at the right moment, the right second, the right focus. That's really rewarding. I think probably the best.
And that's another one I didn't shoot, by the way. So keep it up, keep it up, Brian.
I don't know all your. How many photographs have you taken? 30, 40,000?
Next fantasy camp, no pictures for you. Just keep that in mind. Right?
It's okay. I've retired those skates. There was no blade left on them.
Well, look, Bruce, we appreciate you coming by. We don't want to take too much of your time. I do have one final question, and I know you well enough to know that you're going to shrug this off, but I do want to at least bring this up because this should be in public consciousness. Do you envision a day where your name will be called to join the Hockey Hall of Fame?
Am I supposed to answer that?
Well, I'll answer it. It should be.
Well,
I agree.
I appreciate it. Definitely appreciate it. I don't know if there's a mechanism at this point for photographers, just as there's no mechanism for some of the great public relations directors that I've worked with through the years.
Right.
It doesn't seem like there's a place or a for them to fit in.
That's changed over the years, though. I mean, they've added new categories, I believe.
Trainers were, are admitted now or acknowledged at the Hall of Fame, which is great. Those guys are
I think sooner or later they've got to, because so many photos that are in the Hall of Fame come from the guys like you that are capturing the moments. It's so important to the game.
The history,
it should be definitely
the history
part.
doesn't exist in the form that it currently does without someone leading the pack and taking the photographs that you did. So you may not have to say it out loud, but I think you deserve a spot there, and hopefully we get to see that at some point.
And I'll be there.
And
well, hopefully.
We'll take your photographs. I can take it on my new phone. They're getting really good these days.
I don't show up on photographs. I'm like a vampire. So you can shoot, but I'm not there.
Yeah, this whole time we've been talking to a blank screen. It's been a bizarre interview. Well, Bruce, thank you so much for joining us. Anything you're working on right now? Anything you want to draw attention to out there?
Just working on the Instagram, trying to put up some fun stuff, and really the focus right now.
Maybe people can follow you there.
Yeah, why don't you give out your handle there
Bruce
for Instagram?
_Bennett, 2 N's and 2 T's. Simple as that. And we're headed to Beijing for better or worse. That'll be the next big thing. Unfortunately, I missed the NHL All-Star game for the first time in many, many years because I've got to head to Beijing early and make sure the arenas are set up the way I would like, with the remote cameras and photo positions. So, the next 6 months.
I'd like to go there myself, but I don't know that I'm even allowed.
Who knows?
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think so. I mean,
I think it just
everyone's allowed, but they said specifically Brian Aaronworth can't make the trip. We don't know why. But
I would go if if they were allowing it, because you don't want to miss those moments.
No, definitely.
2010 was a whole other thing. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Bruce, once again, thanks so much for joining us. For Bruce Bennett, Brian Aaronworth, president of Frameworth Sports Marketing, and myself, Mikey Aaronworth, host of the Sign Off podcast, this is us signing off.
Thanks, guys.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we made it to the end of yet another episode. Thanks again so much for joining us. You can find videos of all of our episodes on YouTube by searching the Sign Off Podcast. You can also follow us on Twitter at Frameworth Sport or Instagram at Frameworth Sports. And hey, if you're not sick of me yet, you can find me on Twitter over at Retrograde Mikey, or you can always find me embarrassing myself over on Instagram at Aaronworth. The Sign Off is a proud product of Fadoo Productions and Sad Styles Productions. Executive producers Mikey Aaronworth and Andrew Bascom. Until next week, this is Mikey Aaronworth signing off.
Furnished by Sad Styles Productions.
Get into it!